The salvage vessel Resolute drifted through the silent dark like a lone lantern in an endless night. Its metal hull was scratched by years of exploring forgotten battlefields, abandoned starships, and dead civilizations. Most humans avoided such places, but the crew of the Resolute had built their reputation on traveling where no one else dared. At the center of it all stood their commander, Captain Reese Calder, a man who believed there was no mystery too dangerous, and no void too deep for humanity to understand. Tonight, the ship floated beside a massive alien wreck. The scanners could barely read thousands of meters long, broken in half like a snapped bone. The derelict vessel was unfamiliar, ancient, and beautiful in a strange way. Its hull shone with patterns like frozen lightning. No one knew what species it had belonged to. Its design did not match any known archive. To explorers like Calder, that meant one thing: treasure or trouble. Maybe both. Inside the Resolute, the crew moved with their usual controlled excitement. Salvagers were a strange mix of engineers, fighters, and dreamers. They lived for moments like this. Juno Vale, the ship's chief engineer, stood beside her scanning table, measuring unstable energy spikes coming from the alien wreck. "Captain," she called over the comm, "I'm getting readings I've never seen before. It's like the wreck is awake." Calder smiled at the idea. A dead ship dreaming? That would be a first. "Keep monitoring." He walked across the command deck, where Navigation Officer Rick Sandon adjusted the Resolute's position, nudging it closer to the wreck. Soft blue lights glowed on the floor, and the hum of the engines filled the room like a steady heartbeat. Everything felt normal. Routine, yet Calder had learned long ago that calm moments were often the warning. Before something extraordinary happened, he studied the display showing the other ship. Its interior corridors were twisted, torn apart, and sliced open by something with immense force. No life signs, no movement, no heat, only a faint pulsing energy deep in the ruin's core. It looked like a ship that had died fighting. "Whatever happened in there," Calder muttered. "I hope it doesn't happen to us." A soft alarm beeped. Juno's voice returned, slightly nervous now. "Captain, I think something is moving on that ship." Rick frowned and zoomed the camera feed. At first, the image showed only drifting metal shards floating inside the alien corridors. Then something shifted just a blur, a shape, maybe a shadow. The crew leaned in. It vanished again. Calder rubbed his chin. "Probably debris. Let's not jump at shadows." But deep down, he felt a prick of unease. Years in space gave him a sense for when something was wrong, and right now, that feeling whispered at the back of his mind. He turned away from the screen, preparing to review the salvage plan, when a strange sound echoed behind him, a faint vibration in the air, like static or a soft hum. He thought it came from the console. He took one step toward it. Then someone spoke. "Move." Over. Calder froze. That voice wasn't one of his crew. It wasn't coming from the comm. It wasn't even human. He turned slowly. At the entrance of the command deck stood a woman, tall, slender, and not human at all. Her skin held a faint silver glow, like moonlight reflected off water. Her eyes were large, shaped like falling teardrops, and radiated a soft blue light. Strange markings, almost like circuitry, traced across her neck and temples. And her clothing, if it could be called clothing, was dissolving, a soft, shimmering garment wrapped around her body like living fabric, made of thin metallic threads. But the moment she stepped into the room, it began to peel away, dissolving into tiny particles of light. It wasn't seductive. It was alarming. The crew stared, confused, expecting to see her exposed, but underneath, she wore a plain gray undersuit, simple and practical, clearly standard for her species. The dissolving outer layer had only been protective material, something that reacted to the ship's interior environment. The strange garment melted completely, scattering like dust. Still, the shock of the moment left the room silent. Calder's instincts shouted danger, but another part of him registered the fear in her eyes. She wasn't attacking. She wasn't threatening them. She looked like someone running from something. He took one careful step forward. "Who are you? How did you get on my ship?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she looked past him over his shoulder toward the large window that showed the alien wreck drifting. Outside, her breathing was fast, shallow, panicked. In a voice barely audible, she repeated, "Move over. Please." The please made everything feel more real. "Captain, our sensors didn't detect any life forms boarding us," Rick said, standing slowly. "She shouldn't even be here." Calder lifted a hand to silence him. The alien woman trembled, her silver glowing skin flickering. Tiny sparks danced across her markings, like electrical signals firing. Finally, she spoke clearly. "It followed me." "What followed you?" Calder asked. She swallowed, as if the words themselves hurt. "The thing that destroyed my ship. It hunts energy, movement, sound. I escaped, but it found your vessel. It's here, on board." A cold weight settled in Calder's chest. "A predator, here?" The crew exchanged worried looks. He tried to analyze her statement rationally. "Our boarding alarms would have gone off if something entered. Not if it doesn't use doors." She whispered. The room went silent again. Calder straightened. "What do you mean?" She stepped forward, her knees almost buckling. "My people learn to late. It doesn't pass through space the way living creatures do. It slides between electromagnetic fields. It followed the power trail from my escape, and now your ship has become its hunting ground." Juno's voice crackled through the comm again, sounding frantic. "Captain, something just appeared on the lower deck scanners. It's huge, and it's moving." Calder's jaw tightened. He turned back to the alien woman. "Why tell me to move over?" She closed her eyes as if trying to center herself. "My undersuit projects a low-energy cloak. It hides small electromagnetic signatures. I was trying to cover us both before it sensed you." Calder nodded slowly. The warning made sense in a terrifying way. Rick spoke again, voice low. "Captain, how did she even get here? Did she teleport?" The alien woman shook her head. "There was a fracture in your hull near the docking port, small, barely visible. I used it to enter." Juno's voice returned suddenly, sharper. "Captain, whatever is on the lower deck. It just vanished, and then reappeared." Closer Calder didn't hesitate. He pressed the alert panel on the wall, sounding a quiet ship-wide alarm. Not loud if their visitor was right. Noise could attract the creature. He faced the alien woman. "What's your name?" "Alira," she managed. "Last survivor of the vessel you found?" Calder nodded. "All right, Alira. If something dangerous is on my ship, I need to know how to fight it." Her expression filled with old pain, deep and heavy. "You can't fight it. My people tried. We used weapons stronger than anything humanity has built. We failed. Everyone failed. You must flee." Calder stared at her. His voice became firm, steady. "Humanity doesn't flee." Alira blinked. The courage in his voice was something she clearly didn't expect. Before she could respond, the lights flickered. A faint, low rumble drifted through the walls, like something dragging metal claws along the ship's spine. Alira's eyes widened in terror. "It's here." Calder looked at his crew, at the flickering displays, at the dark doorway behind the command deck, and for the first time in years, he felt a cold shiver run down his spine. Whatever had followed Alira was now inside the Resolute, and it was hunting. For a moment, the command deck of the Resolute stood completely silent. Not even the usual humming of the engines felt normal anymore. The lights flickered softly, as if something unseen was brushing against the ship's power lines. Captain Reese Calder stayed perfectly still. His mind worked fast, but his body remained steady. Panic was dangerous right now. The strange alien woman, Alira, watched the ceiling like she expected something to break through at any second. Her silver-lit skin trembled, tiny sparks rippling across her markings. Calder could tell she wasn't lying about the danger. She looked like someone who had seen too much. A deep metallic groaning sound rolled through the ship, shaking the floor under their feet. Rick, the navigation officer, grabbed the edge of his console. "Captain, whatever that thing is, it's moving fast." Deck 7 just reported pressure changes. Calder looked at the nearest screen. The internal sensors flickered between static and unreadable blobs of energy. Whatever the creature was, the scanners struggled to follow it. "Alira," Calder said quietly, "how much do you know about this thing?" She pressed a hand against the wall to steady herself. "It is not a creature in the way you understand. My people called it a void stalker. It lives inside electromagnetic distortions. It doesn't walk, it slides. It doesn't breathe. It feeds on energy signatures. Juno's voice appeared over the comm again, shaky. Captain, Deck 7's cameras just went dark. No visuals. Calder's voice remained calm. Crew, stay quiet. No sudden noise. He looked at Alira again. What else? Alira swallowed hard. It sees through electrical patterns. The more energy something emits, the easier it is for the stalker to find it. If you fire a gun, if you light a torch, if you shout too loud, it will know. Rick glanced nervously at the glowing screens around them. Captain, everything on this deck emits energy. Calder nodded. I know. Alira looked at the floor, her voice soft. On my ship, we tried everything. Weapons, barriers, flares. It killed hundreds in minutes. Calder studied her. She wasn't exaggerating. Her eyes held the truth of someone who had watched her world collapse. But you escaped, he said. Her expression tightened. Only because the cloak in my suit hides my energy signature. But alone, I would not have survived long. It follows anything warm, anything alive. The lights flickered again. This time, the flicker felt closer. Rick whispered. Captain, I think it's climbing up the ship. Calder straightened. His voice carried authority without needing to be loud. Everyone stay calm. A creature that hunts energy won't expect humans to fight smart. Alira stared at him in disbelief. Fight? You cannot fight it. Calder turned to her. Alira, humanity has faced things we weren't meant to survive. We don't win because we're strong. We win because we refuse to die when the universe tells us to. She blinked, processing the stubborn courage in his words, but then a sudden hollow boom echoed through the corridor just outside the command deck. Not like footsteps, more like a huge object hitting the metal walls and sliding past. The lights dimmed to half power. Rick whispered, It's right outside. A low vibration hummed through the metal floor, as if something enormous was scraping its way toward them, slow, careful, curious. Alira's voice became barely audible. It senses us. Calder made a decision. Shut down non-essential systems. Dim everything to emergency levels. Rick nodded and lowered the power output. The deck's lights faded to a dull red glow. Most screens went dark. The room became eerily still. Juno's voice returned through the dim comms, hushed. Captain, power levels are dropping across the ship. The creature is draining us. Alira whispered. It feeds. Calder exhaled. Then we starve it. He tapped the emergency manual controls. Rick, route energy from the upper decks to the lower hull sections. Make it think the crew is down there. Rick blinked. We're baiting it? Yes, Calder said. Let it chase empty rooms, not us. Alira watched him, shocked. You humans. You tried to outthink everything. Even death. Calder gave her a quiet smile. It's worked so far. Another deep groan shook the ship, like something massive turning its head. The energy spikes on the small remaining scanner flashed briefly. Rick's eyes widened. Captain, it's moving toward Deck 4. The bait worked. Calder looked at Alira. You'll help us understand it. We'll handle the rest. Alira opened her mouth to speak, but suddenly, the deck lights surged bright for a split second, then died again. A wave of cold swept through the air, and something whispered in the ventilation ducts. It wasn't a voice. It was like static, like electricity crackling just beyond hearing. Alira's face drained of color. No, it's searching. It knows I'm here. Calder stepped beside her. Hey, we won't let it reach you. She looked at him with confusion. Why? We only just met. Calder pointed at the blue Earth emblem on his shoulder. Because you asked for help. That's enough. Before she could respond, the ship shook hard. A screeching noise like metal tearing echoed through the entire Resolute. Juno's voice shouted over the comm. Captain, the stalker just ripped open the coolant chamber on Deck 4. It's tearing through the pipes like paper. Calder clenched his teeth. It thinks there's life there. Alira grabbed his arm. Captain, if the coolant leaks, your reactor will become unstable. Calder nodded. We'll fix it. The emergency lights pulsed again. The deck's power readings dropped even lower. Rick checked the remaining scanner. It's moving again. Fast. The scanner jittered, glitched, then froze. A single reading blinked on screen: location, Deck 3. Direction, upward. Speed, impossible. Rick whispered, Captain, it's coming toward us. A cold heaviness settled in the room. Calder breathed out slowly. Everyone stay quiet. No loud noise. No sudden power spikes. Alira closed her eyes, terrified. It knows we are alive. It is coming for the strongest energy source. Your command deck has the highest concentration of systems. Calder made his decision instantly. Rick, Juno, seal off the command deck. Activate emergency magnetic barriers. Rick stared. Captain, if you stay. I know, Calder said. Alira looked at him, startled. You're going to face it? He shook his head. No, I'm going to distract it. She grabbed his wrist. You will die. He met her glowing eyes. Not today. She tried to speak. But the deck suddenly shuddered again. Something heavy slammed into a nearby bulkhead. The vibration traveled through the floor and into their bones. Calder lowered his voice to a soft whisper. Alira, your cloak, how many can it cover? 2. Maybe 3, if we stay very close. Calder nodded. Good, Rick. Get Juno to the engine room and prepare a full power route. I'll draw that thing toward the cargo bay. Rick's eyes widened. Captain, Calder gave him a steady look. That's an order. Rick swallowed, nodded once, and rushed out with the others. Now only Calder and Alira remained. Another metallic scraping noise echoed closer. Much closer. Alira stepped nearer, activating her suit's cloak. A faint shimmer spread like soft ripples in the air around them. It will not hide us long. She whispered. It only needs to hide us long enough, Calder replied. We just need to reach the lift. The air turned colder. The lights dimmed even further. Then, at the far end of the quarter outside the command deck, something moved, not a shape, not a body, a distortion, like someone sliding a piece of glass across reality. The Void Stalker had found them. Calder felt the hair on his arms rise. A pressure pushed against his ears. The air around the distortion twisted, bending light like gravity itself was warping. Alira gripped his sleeve. Do not run. Running makes energy. Then we walk, Calder whispered. The two stepped slowly into the corridor. Wrapped inside the cloak's faint shimmer, the creature drifted closer. Its presence buzzing like electricity. Calder's heart thudded in his chest. Loud enough he feared it would echo. But he kept his steps steady. The lift was only 20 meters away. 20 long, silent meters. Behind them, the stalker's whispering static grew louder. Alira breathed shakily. Do not look at it. Looking breaks the cloak. Calder kept his eyes forward. 5 meters. 3. They stepped inside the lift. Calder pressed the lowest deck. The door slid shut. As they closed. The lights flickered and a cold, distorted shadow passed directly outside. Alira collapsed against the wall in relief. Calder pressed his back to the metal, chest rising and falling. But neither said a word. Because they both knew. The Void Stalker wasn't confused. It wasn't fooled. It was hunting. And now, it was hunting them. The lift descended slowly, humming with weak power as emergency systems struggled to keep the Resolute alive. Captain Reese Calder watched the flickering lights above them, counting each second in his head. Every moment spent in this metal box felt dangerous. The Void Stalker was hunting, and lifts were glowing beacons of energy. Alira stood close to him, her silver-lit skin dim under the cloak field. She breathed with short, trembling breaths, and her glowing blue eyes never left the lift doors. When the lift finally reached the lower deck, it stopped with a soft jerk. The door slid open into a dark corridor lit only by faint red emergency lights. Pipes ran along the ceiling like veins. Shadows stretched across the floors in long lines. Calder stepped out first, scanning the hall. Stay behind me. Alira followed carefully. Captain, we should not keep moving. The cloak field is weakening. We should hide. Calder shook his head. No, hiding will only delay the creature. We need a plan that can defeat it. Her voice was quiet but firm. My people tried to defeat it. We failed. Calder didn't slow down. Then humanity will try something different. Alira stared at him, confused. Why risk yourselves for a stranger? For me, Calder answered without hesitation. Because you're alive. And alive is enough. Alira didn't understand humans, not yet, but she nodded anyway. They reached the end of the hallway where a large door led to the engine complex. Before they entered, Calder tapped his comm. "Juno, report." Static filled the channel. Then Juno's voice cracked through. "Captain, thank the stars. We're in the reactors. Rick is trying to strengthen the shields. The Void Stalker already drained half our energy. If it reaches the core, it won't," Calder said firmly. "We saw it pass through the coolant tunnels." Juno added, "It didn't even break the metal, it just slipped through it." Calder exchanged a look with Alira. She whispered, "It is not bound by matter. Focus on strengthening what you can," Calder ordered. "I'll be there soon." He cut the comm. A loud metallic echo traveled down the hallway behind them. A slow, dragging noise like something sliding through steel. Alira stiffened. "It is close." Calder looked around. No movement, no shape. But he felt the pressure in the air shift, as though something massive was gliding nearby. "Move." He whispered. They entered the engine room and sealed the door behind them. Inside, Juno and Rick stood over a flaming hot reactor core. Sparks shot from loose wires. Glowing conduits pulsed weakly, like a dying heartbeat. The entire room smelled of smoke and hot metal. Juno turned and froze at the sight of Alira. "So the alien is real?" Alira bowed her head slightly. "I did not intend to bring the stalker to your ship." Rick shook his head. "We don't blame you. We just want to live." Calder raised his hand, bringing everyone's attention. "We don't have time for fear. We need solutions. Fast." Rick pulled up a cracked display screen. "Captain, this thing is draining us faster than we can reroute power. It's absorbing electricity, radiation, even heat. Every time the ship generates energy, it eats it." Alira spoke softly. "It is drawn to life, but it feeds on power. If you cannot weaken it, you must trap it." Calder straightened. "Trap, that's it." "The coolant chamber." Juno blinked. "Captain, the coolant chamber is half frozen and the temperature is unstable. If that thing goes inside, it will lose shape," Calder said. "Alira told us it slides through electromagnetic fields. If we redirect power and force it into the coolant, the cold might disrupt its form." Alira hesitated. "Maybe, but it will sense the trap. Unless we make something tastier than us," Calder said. Rick stared. "Captain, you're not talking about bait?" "I am," he said calmly. "We'll simulate a life signature stronger than ours. Something the creature can't ignore." Juno's eyes widened. "Using the reactor's diagnostic pulse?" Calder nodded. "Exactly." Alira looked uncertain. "But the pulse will draw it quickly." "Too quickly? That's the idea." Calder turned to his crew. "We route the pulse to the coolant chamber. When the creature enters, I close the blast doors and we hit it with a graviton shock." Juno swallowed. "Captain, that shock wave will collapse anything inside, including anyone in the chamber." "I won't be inside," Calder said. But Alira's eyes sharpened. She read his face quickly. "You intend to lure it yourself?" Rick gasped. "Captain, no." Juno shook her head. "That's suicide." Calder met their eyes one by one. "It's our best chance. The Void Stalker hunts life, not machines, not illusions. If we wanted to enter the trap, I have to lead it there." A heavy silence filled the engine room. Alira stared at him. "You are willing to die for your crew?" Calder answered softly. "A captain protects his ship." She shook her head. "My people never understood such sacrifice. Then humanity will teach you." Calder said with a small smile. Before anyone could argue further, a sudden bang rattled the door behind them. A whispering static sound seeped through the cracks. Juno whispered, "It found us." Rick's face went pale. "Captain, it's here." Calder clicked into action. "Everyone into positions." "Juno, start powering the coolant chamber trap." "Rick, reroute the diagnostic pulse." The two rushed to their stations. Alira grabbed Calder's arm. "You must not go alone." "I'm not alone," he said. "You're guiding me." Her silver-lit skin dimmed. "I can only hide you, not protect you." "That's enough." Another loud scrape echoed through the corridor outside. The metal door began to bend inward, pushed by something invisible. Alira whispered, "It is sensing us." "Then let it," Calder said. He activated the emergency seal. The secondary barrier slid into place behind the main door, buying them precious seconds. Rick shouted, "Pulse ready in 60 seconds." Juno called out, "Coolant chamber at half power." "Hurry." Calder tightened his gloves and turned to Alira. "Stay close. You'll need the cloak to hide until the last second." Alira exhaled shakily. "Captain, I fear for you." He placed a steady hand on her shoulder. "Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the decision to move anyway." Her glowing eyes softened. "Then go. I will help guide you." The metal door groaned again, splitting open this time. Cold air swept in, followed by the sound of static whispers creeping inside the engine room. Rick's voice cracked. "It's breaking through." Calder stepped away from the others. Alira cloak. She touched the device on her wrist. A soft shimmer wrapped around them both. Calder whispered, "Let's go." They slipped into the shadows and exited through a side hatch just as the main door finally broke. A wave of static energy burst into the engine room behind them, rattling pipes and shaking the floor. Alira whispered urgently, "It is following. It senses you." "Good," Calder said. "Let it." They ran down the long hallway, the emergency lights blinking overhead like dying stars. Calder kept his breathing steady, forcing his steps to remain slow and controlled. The cloak would fail if he moved too fast. Behind them, the Void Stalker drifted from the engine room, its invisible body bending the air and twisting light. It pulsed with chilling, hungry energy. Alira kept glancing back. "It is gaining." Calder pointed ahead. "Coolant chamber." Almost there, they reached the large blast door. Calder pressed the manual override. The heavy door slid open, releasing a wave of freezing air that stung his skin. Inside, thick white mist floated like frozen clouds. Alira stopped suddenly. "Captain, that cold will hurt you." Calder stepped through anyway. "It doesn't need to hurt me. It needs to hurt the creature." He took his position beside the coolant core. Alira stayed at the doorway. "Captain, please be careful." Calder smiled faintly. "Always." Rick's voice boomed through the comm, urgent. "Captain, diagnostic pulse firing in 10 seconds. Get ready." The creature approached, its form bending the corridor walls as it slid closer. Calder braced himself. Alira covered her mouth as fear gripped her. The Void Stalker entered the chamber. Rick's voice shouted, "Pulse firing." A blinding flare of artificial life signature energy burst into the room. The creature snapped toward it like a starving beast. Calder shouted, "Alira, now." She slammed the blast door controls. With a deafening clang, the massive door sealed shut. The creature was inside. The trap was set, but the battle was only beginning. The blast door slammed shut with a thunderous metallic clang, sealing Captain Reese Calder and the Void Stalker inside the freezing coolant chamber. The temperature dropped instantly, biting into his skin like icy claws. Frost crawled across the floor, wrapping around Calder's boots. Outside, Alira stood trembling beside the control panel, her hands shaking as she activated the chamber's internal lock. The cloak flickered around her like a wounded flame, barely holding on. Her voice trembled as she spoke into the comm. "Juno, the creature is inside. Calder is in danger." Juno's reply came through choppy static. "We see the readings. Hang on. The coolant is dropping. Calder needs to move before." The rest of her sentence cut off. Inside the chamber, Calder braced himself against the metal railing. Cold vapor swirled around him in thick white clouds, making it hard to see more than a few meters. His breath turned to ice as soon as it left his mouth. He could not see the Void Stalker, but he could feel it. Every hair on his body tingled. The air pressed on him like an invisible weight. The coolant vapors twisted unnaturally, spiraling toward a single point behind the fog. Calder whispered, "Come on. I know you're there." A crackling noise answered him, a distorted static whisper that vibrated through the frozen air. The diagnostic pulse Rick fired earlier echoed faintly from the coolant core, drawing the Void Stalker closer like a beacon. And that was exactly what Calder needed. "If you want power." Calder muttered, "Come take it." The fog parted suddenly. A ripple of reality bent toward him. Lines blurred. Light warped. Space twisted as if someone pushed their hand through a sheet of water. The Void Stalker appeared, not as a creature with a face or body, but as a dark distortion outlined by crackling arcs of energy. It was like a living hole in reality, drawing warmth, light, and electricity into its hungry core. Calder felt its presence crawl into his bones. His muscles stiffened. His breath froze in midair. His vision flickered. But he held his ground. "Come on," he whispered through clenched teeth. "Just a little closer." Outside, Alira watched helplessly from the control window. Her glowing blue eyes widened as she saw the distortion form round Calder. "Juno? Rick, the creature is on him?" Rick's voice came through the comm, breathless. "Blast doors are sealed. Gravity shock is charging. Captain needs to hold it in place." Juno added grimly, "If he moves even one step away from the core, the trap won't work." Alira pressed both hands against the glass, her markings glowing with fear. "He cannot stand that close. The cold will kill him." But Calder wasn't thinking about the cold. He was thinking about time. Inside the chamber, ice formed on his fingertips. His joints felt stiff. His heartbeat slowed. The cold was trying to claim him. But he focused on the void stalker. Watching its patterns ripple, the creature drifted toward him, drawn by life, heat, and energy. Reached out like a shadow stretching across the world. Calder took one steady breath. "Now," he whispered. The creature lunged, exactly as planned. The void stalker shot forward, bending the coolant vapor around it in a spiraling vortex. As it passed over the coolant core, its shape flickered violently. The cold hit it, distorting its form, causing it to tremble like disrupted light. "This was the moment, Rick," Calder shouted. "Do it." Alira, hearing his voice, slammed her hand onto the intercom. "Rick, fire the shock." Rick didn't hesitate. Inside the engine room, he pulled the gravity switch. Outside the coolant chamber, alarms blared. Inside the chamber, the air exploded with force. A deep boom echoed through the Resolute as the gravity shock wave detonated. Inside the sealed chamber, the floor quaked. Frost blew into the air in white sheets. Calder felt the impact slam into him, throwing him against the railing. The void stalker shrieked not in sound, but in a ripple of warped energy that stabbed into Calder's mind like needles. The chamber lights flickered wildly. The creature's form stretched, split, compressed, and shattered like a fractured shadow caught in a storm. Alira gasped. "It is breaking," Juno shouted over the comm, shockwave holding. "Keep it contained." The void stalker twisted violently, its shape melting into a storm of static. Each pulse of gravity force forced its energy to collapse, pressing it into a tight sphere of distortion. Calder forced himself to stay conscious. The cold clawed at him. His vision blurred at the edges. He needed to stay focused. He needed to confirm the creature was collapsing. The distortion convulsed one last time. Then a blinding flash filled the chamber, a shattering, gut-rattling burst of silent energy shook the entire room. The void stalker's form broke apart into a burst of disintegrating particles, scattering like black dust swallowed by the coolant vapors. The distortion vanished. Silence returned. Complete. Icy silence. Alira clapped her hand to her mouth. "The creature, it is gone," Juno shouted joyfully. "We did it. The readings are dropping. The void stalker's energy signature is gone." Rick added, "The creature is dead." Calder pulled it off. Alira didn't celebrate. Her heart raced, because something was wrong. She saw Calder's figure collapse to his knees inside the chamber. "Captain?" she whispered. He didn't respond. He fell forward, hitting the frozen floor hard. Frost puffed around him. The comm crackled. "Captain Calder, respond." Rick called. Alira's voice broke. "He is down. He is freezing." She slammed the emergency override. The blast door unlocked with a heavy thud. She rushed inside. The cold hit her instantly, biting through her undersuit. But she didn't hesitate. She ran across the icy floor and dropped to her knees beside Calder. His skin was pale. Frost clung to his suit. His breathing was faint. Alira lifted his head gently. "Captain, stay with me." He blinked slowly, shivering uncontrollably. "Alira, is it gone?" He whispered weakly. "Yes," she breathed. "You defeated it." A small, tired smile touched his lips. "Good. Then let's go home." Alira pressed her forehead to his, her markings glowing softly. Hold on. Do not leave me now. The engine room door burst open behind her. Juno and Rick rushed in wearing thermal gear, carrying heating blankets and medkits. Rick gasped. Captain, he's freezing. Juno snapped. Get him wrapped now. The two knelt beside Alira and covered Calder with thermal blankets, activating the heat modules. Calder's breath trembled, but his eyes stayed open. Alira held his hand tightly. You cannot die. Not after all this, he exhaled softly. I'm not planning to. Juno looked at Alira with new respect. You helped save this ship. Alira shook her head. I only guided. He fought. Rick stood and looked around the chamber. We need to get everyone back to medical. This whole deck is freezing. Juno and Rick lifted Calder carefully. Alira stayed at his side, her glowing eyes watching him every second. They made their way out of the coolant chamber, leaving behind the fading mist and shattered remains of the Void Stalker's energy. But the victory wasn't the end. It was only the turning point. Alira glanced at the others. The galaxy has never seen humans like you, she whispered, and now, she added softly, neither have I. The Resolute was damaged, wounded, and cold, but alive. And as long as humanity drew breath, their fight against the darkness of the universe had only just begun. The Resolute drifted quietly through space, its engines humming in a slow, steady rhythm. Repairs had begun, but the ship still carried scars from the battle with the Void Stalker. Panels were cracked, lights flickered, and several decks were sealed for safety. But the ship was alive, and so was Captain Reese Calder. He woke in the medical bay 2 days after the battle, wrapped in thermal blankets under a soft warming field. Alira sat beside him, her cloak folded neatly, her glowing markings dim but peaceful. She had not left his side since the crew brought him in. Calder blinked slowly, adjusting to the soft lights above him. How long was I out? Juno stepped forward with a smile. Long enough for Rick to try to fix the coffee machine. Rick raised a hand defensively from the corner of the room. Hey, I succeeded. Sort of. Calder let out a weak laugh. Good. That was our biggest problem. Alira leaned closer, relief flashing across her eyes. You are awake. That is what matters. Calder tried to sit up, wincing at the stiffness in his muscles. Alira gently placed a hand on his shoulder. Slow, she advised. Your body is still recovering. He nodded, taking a steady breath. Status report. Juno cleared her throat and pulled up a holographic display. The creature's energy signature is completely gone. Ship damage is extensive, but we're repairing fast. We could reach the nearest human outpost in 5 days. Rick added, crew morale is insanely high. Everyone is calling you the guy who fist fought a void monster. Calder shook his head. I didn't fist fight anything. Juno smirked. Doesn't matter. The story's already spreading. Alira looked at Calder with quiet admiration. Stories inspire. Humans seem to live by them. He looked back at her. And what about you? You okay after the shockwave? She nodded. Your engineers helped stabilize my cloak. It is weaker now, but still working. Calder sat up more comfortably. Good, you're part of this crew now. We take care of our own. Alira's eyes widened slightly at his words, her glowing markings warming with soft color. Before anyone could say more, the ship's intercom crackled on. Captain Calder. This is command deck, a young officer's voice said. A signal is coming in. It's unusual. Calder frowned. Unusual how? It is not human, the officer replied. But also, not hostile. Calder exchanged a glance with his team. Patch it through, he ordered. A few seconds later, the lights dimmed and a hologram flickered into the room. It formed a swirling pattern of shifting symbols complex. Alien shapes that slowly arranged themselves into a readable translation. A calm, resonant voice spoke. To the vessel Resolute, we acknowledge your victory over the void entity. Alira's eyes widened sharply. It is an ancient tongue. Very old. Very powerful. The message continued. We have watched the shadows press against your species. Few stand so boldly against the dark. Fewer still survive. Calder narrowed his eyes. Who is this? The symbols rearranged again. We are the Vigilant Chorus. Guardians of ancient borders. Watchers of old threats. The creature you fought is only the first fragment of a greater breach, Rick groaned. Of course. There's always a bigger problem. Alira stepped toward the hologram, her voice trembling. The Chorus were believed to be myths, a species older than most star systems. No one has spoken to them in millennia. The message reacted to her voice, the symbols rippling. Alira of the Wandered Flame, lost one. Exile of the Radiant Line, you have returned to the path. Juno whispered. It knows her name? Alira's breath caught. I do not know how. The hologram continued. Your combined strength has proven that humanity and its allies still hold fire within. The dark will rise again. Prepare yourselves. We will send coordinates suddenly. Another set of numbers appeared in the air coordinates thousands of light years away. Beyond charted space, Rick blinked at them. Those are in a dead zone. Nothing survives there. No stars, no planets. Just empty space. Alira shook her head slowly. Not empty, hidden. The hologram flickered. Come when ready. We will explain what is coming. Then, with a soft hum, the hologram dissolved into the air. Silence filled the room. Calder rubbed his forehead. So we save the ship, kill the monster, and the universe rewards us with another crisis. Juno smiled tiredly. Sounds like a Tuesday. Rick sighed. We're seriously going to go, aren't we? Calder looked around the room at his crew's family. They had fought together, bled together, survived the impossible together. Yeah, he said finally. We're going. Alira studied him carefully. You would face danger again so soon. He nodded. If there's a threat coming, humanity needs to know. And if those coordinates hold answers, we need them. Alira lowered her gaze. Then I will stay with you. Calder blinked. What? She raised her eyes, glowing softly. You gave me a place on this ship. A purpose. I will not leave while the danger grows. Juno grinned. Looks like we have a new permanent crew member. Rick shrugged. As long as she doesn't mess with my tools. Alira tilted her head. I do not know how to use your tools. Rick pointed. Exactly. Let's keep it that way. Calder chuckled, then stood slowly from the bed, using Alira's hand for balance. All right, let's get back to work. Juno crossed her arms. Captain, Medical said. I know what they said. Calder interrupted. But the ship needs me, and we have a message to answer. The medical doors slid open as he walked out, supported gently by Alira. Cold Carters greeted him, but he felt warmer than before, maybe from the heating blankets, or maybe from something else. Crew members saluted as he passed. Some whispered, That's him, or he fought it, or humans don't back down. Alira watched them with wonder. Your people respect you deeply. Calder shook his head. They respect survival and courage, both of which we shared. As they reached the command deck, the wide window showed an ocean of stars stretching beyond the ship. The Resolute floated with quiet pride, its hull battered but unbroken. Calder took his seat at the captain's chair. Alira stood beside him. Juno and Rick took their stations. You all right, Captain? Juno asked. Never better, Calder said. Rick grinned. Orders? Calder looked at the star field, then at the coordinates glowing on the display. Plot a course, he said with a steady voice. We're going to meet the Vigilant course. Juno nodded and entered commands. The engines hummed louder. The screen shifted as the stars realigned. Alira looked at Calder. Are you afraid? He breathed slowly. Of course. Any sane person would be. She smiled gently. Then we will face the fear together. He looked back at her. Yeah, together. The engines roared. The Resolute turned, aligning its golden wings with the uncharted darkness, humanity's. Fire burned bright within its battered hull. Alira rested one hand on Calder's shoulder as the stars stretched into lines. The galaxy watched. The void waited. And humanity, bold, stubborn, impossible humanity, pushed forward anyway. The Resolute jumped to light speed, carrying its brave crew toward whatever waited in the shadows. Humanity was not done. Not now, not ever.